Hello again and welcome to the 29 January 2016 edition of Portsmouth This Week. Our special guest today on the program is coming back for the second time in a few months is Jim Garman. Jim is our town historian and he's also the president of the Portsmouth Historical Society. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Doug.
The last time you were on in November, you had just become the president of the Historical Society. And I know there's been a lot of activity going on. I wonder if you could just address where the Historical Society is now and what we're going to be doing.
Okay. The Historical Society spends a lot of time in this time of year having meetings, getting organized, setting up committees and things like that. And we've been very active doing that. We've had a couple board meetings and a couple small group meetings to try to get things going. Once we're setting up for a program schedule that will last for the whole year once we get started. We've had a membership drive that started in mid-November, I think it was, and at that point the Historical Society had 110 members, and almost less than half of whom lived in Portsmouth. As of this week, we now have 370 members of the Historical Society because we sent out a bulk mailing to everyone. The response has been wonderful. We've been really pleased with that. We've had a number of people who have gone beyond the basic membership fee and given us extra money, and we've gotten some donations as well. So it's going really well. In addition, because we have some problems with the building, many of which have been fixed already, but we had some water damage a year and a half ago, and what we've done is realize a grant from the Rhode Island Historic Preservation Heritage Commission of $30,000. This is a matching grant. We have to raise the equivalent amount of money to match it, and we're working on that. We have fundraising going on as well.
And this is to be used for the rehab of the building?
Fixing up the building, yeah. There's a lot of work. It's an 1865 building, and there's a lot of work needed for dehumidification, jazzing up the furnace a little bit so it works better. It's a wonderful facility. It's a great meeting hall. And unfortunately, we don't have handicap access yet, but that's number one on the priority list right now, what we're trying to do. We really want to have that handicap access so that the building can be rented out to various functions, and it's one of the biggest meeting halls in the town, so it's really great for that. We're also working on a schedule of events for the year. We hope to have the museum open more often than it has been, which has been 2 hours on Sunday afternoon in the summer. We want to try to open it on Saturday and Sunday if we can. We need docents, and we hope some of our new members will come through to volunteer to be docents. We have a great guide and handbook for how to do that, and so it isn't something that you have to be an expert in Portsmouth history to be able to do.
Let me ask you a question there. What exactly is a docent?
A docent is someone who receives the visitors, welcomes the visitors who come, and we have docent training sessions. And a docent is kind of a guide, is probably another word for it. But a lot of it is self-guided. People go into a museum and they look in display cases. They can see for themselves what's there. It's all tagged and everything. And also, we need the docents, though, to show off the building. The building was restored. The church part of the building was restored about 20 years ago, and it's an absolute beautiful old church that kind of shows itself. In addition, we have other buildings. We have one of the original, one of the earliest schools, probably the earliest school building in Rhode Island, and dates from 1725. It's been written up in a national book as well, and we also have the original town hall that used to sit behind the current town hall. It was moved there about 20 years ago. Those buildings are full. The schoolhouse is as it was laid out then, although it's gone through a couple of transitions in the meantime. It was a harness barn on a farm for a while, and we have a great display of things in the old town hall as well. We have a hearse, for example, a horse-drawn hearse that dates back about 100 years or so. No, more than that, about 140 years, and in need of some restoration, but it really does enable you to see sort of what things were like. Also a lot of farm tools and things like that. So there's lots to see, and there's lots that a visitor can walk around and see for themselves. It's not a matter of the docent having to be an expert on the
So
on
they don't
museum.
need to be historians or
Not at all.
specially trained. They do just need to be oriented.
We like to have people-friendly people. We want to encourage people to come. Although we have increased our membership significantly, we still have a ways to go. There's about 17,000 people in this town. And one other thing in regard to memberships is you don't have to be a Portsmouth resident to be a member of the Portsmouth Historical Society. I personally am a member of 4 different historical societies in the area, all in Newport County. And they have, all of them have really great programs that you can go to, and we want to get in on that. And so if people live all the way in Middletown or Tiverton, why, you can join the Portsmouth Historical Society too. So we'll work on that. Other things, we're going to have kick off our season on the 7th of March. 7th of March is the day that the first settlers in Portsmouth decided to come here. And they wrote a compact, a document, in which they agreed to band together for the common good. And it was a very religious document. And some of the famous early settlers of Quidnick Island signed it. We're going to have that on display. We're getting it out of the state archives for a day, and it's pretty extraordinary to see a document with signatures that was put together in March of 1638. It's quite a treasure for us, and it is, unlike many towns don't have much of this, but it's the founding document of Portsmouth.
Yeah, it's
Great
also
research.
nationally known, I think, for being
Right.
one of the first statements of independence, etc.
Yeah, there are a lot of people around, and the people pass through Portsmouth where they see a sign that says founded on the compact, and they don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And so this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a session to show it and talk about it in order to kick off our season.
Yeah, I guess a big part of the Historical Society mission is educating people about the history
Yeah,
in our town.
Portsmouth has a wonderful history. It really does. I mean, we read in the local area, we read a lot about Newport history and all the buildings and things that happened there and so on, which is wonderful. They certainly exploit it. We want to do that too here. We want people to know that the history of Portsmouth, which predates Newport, by the way, by a year, Portsmouth was too crowded. There were 35 people here, so 8 of them left and went to Newport. Actually, they went because of the harbor. It was a much better harbor. And so the history that we have is scattered through generation after generation. And one thing about Portsmouth is we have a number of people who live in Portsmouth who are direct line
Yeah,
descendants.
I've noticed that at the 375th.
Yeah. We have people, and I think everyone is a descendant of Ann Hutchinson one way or another. At least that's what we hear.
Seems like.
But I think that our history is so wonderful, but our town is kind of spread around a bit, and obviously it was very much a rural agrarian town for a long time, and with no town center as such, specifically, they're working on that. There's a lot of neighborhoods, and people kind of live in their neighborhood. Excuse me. So what we want to do is kind of generalize more specifically, because it is a town where you can ride around and you can say, well, this happened there and this happened there. I mean, a Revolutionary War battle took place up above the high school and on the property over on the West Main Road. A lot of people don't know that. They don't know what went on. And there have been books written. There have been reenactments in 1978 and in 2003. Hopefully pretty soon we'll be coming up on the 250th anniversary of that, and we'll have another reenactment. It was really spectacular. I participated in both those reenactments, and they really were fun things to do. They really brought the town out.
Did you wear a costume and carry a gun?
No, I carried a camera. I was photographing both of them. And although someone said I should have put a costume on, but I was on the committee that worked on both of them.
Yeah.
And it was a great weekend that we had here. I mean, we had like 2,500 troops and about 10,000 spectators. I mean, it went on for the whole weekend. It was wonderful. So there's a lot of history here, and a lot of people who come and go in Portsmouth and maybe not be aware of how much history there is here. But that's one of that is probably the major mission of the Historical Society as we start on this new direction a little bit. We really want to have everyone come and hear about the different aspects of the town, because there's so many different things. I mean, the Gentleman Farms, which you can all still see, the Battle of Rhode Island, the ferries, the railroads, the steamboats, all of this. As we know, the town has, and the Land Trust have just conserved Bristol Ferry. Well, Bristol Ferry is a really critical location in the early days of Portsmouth. The first ferry from there went across to Bristol in 1640, and the town was founded in 1638. So they had the ferry started then, and it went through all the iterations from a rowboat to a sailboat to a horse-drawn boat, horse-powered boat, to steamboats, and there's so much history right there. I think I write local history, and I think it's important that more people do. I think it's something essential that we have to wake up people to the fact that we have so much history here.
Yeah.
It's really important.
I think the more people learn about our history, the more apt they'll be to get involved. So you got a lot of activity going on now, and it's going to continue into the spring.
Right.
I guess what people might want to know is how can members or just people at large that are interested in this stuff and want to help, how can they get involved? And, what's the best way to help out?
I think there are a lot of different possibilities of help that we can use. We can use everything from contractors to people who can hammer a nail. There's all sorts of different aspects of that can be done. People can come and be docents. People can come to the meetings and help with our archives. We had, about 2 years ago, someone brought into the Historical Society a pile of 18th and 19th century documents about that high. And you know, where'd this come from? Well, we don't know. Someone was going to throw it out. That's one of the problems. There's still attics to be cleaned out in this town. And there's still stuff that we can use. There's some things that we you know, if it's a book, we would like it to be relevant to Portsmouth or Rhode Island history, but there's just so much stuff. Family photograph albums, the ability we have today of copying any document, any picture, digitizing it is so important, and it doesn't, as everybody thought in the beginning, it was going to ruin the original. It doesn't at all. And it's just a matter of getting this stuff into the computer and having that available. There's just so much of that kind of stuff. So I think that we really are looking for documents, we're looking for archives, we're looking for family histories, we're looking for just about anything. And then on the other side, the more practical aspect. Somebody who can come and help us clean the museum or straighten things up or hang up something and things like that. It's just really, some of it's very menial work that we do around our houses all the time. And we want volunteers to come forward to that. And so we have an email address set up, and that email address will put you in contact with me, and I will forward your request to help to anybody else that I know within the organization that can contact you. We're desperate for help. We really want a lot of help.
I know at the last meeting you set up some committees within the board. Can members support those as well?
I think that's a very important aspect of what people can do to kind of find their way into the Historical Society and the history. We have committees that are relatively typical of most other committees. We have a fundraising committee, we have a bylaws committee, and we're thinking about doing some work on the bylaws. We have committees that for program. A lot of people have a lot of ideas of things for programs. There's so many different aspects of things that we can talk about, and we can have a meeting on any occasion. We're trying to work out a schedule for the year so that we know you know, what to expect, so we can publish it so people know what to expect as well. And you know, that's the kind of thing. If people have ideas, people have a cousin in Providence that's done local research or something like that, just let us know. We also are in the process of working out a relationship with historic preservation people and historians at Roger Williams University, and hopefully we're going to have some students from there in the fall to come and help with a lot of the work that we're doing. We need people to guide them. We need people to show them, you know, what's important, what isn't. It's as a historian and a teacher of history for 50 years, getting that kind of hands-on action when you're in college is something that can be career starting. And I think that you can read all the American history books you want, but if you're reading somebody's diary from the Battle of Rhode Island or something like that, wow, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think, or seeing the graffiti in the wall from whatever it is, 1852 in the schoolhouse.
The schoolhouse, yeah, we have some graffiti that was put on the wall there at one point, and fortunately it wasn't plastered over or painted over, it's still there. That's at our little schoolhouse, our little southernmost school that we have at the Historical Society.
What kind of specific help, like if people want to volunteer, they could go to that email address, they could send you something, and like you say, you could parcel it out to whoever on the board is kind of cog of that. How about some specific things that might interest people?
Well, I think, again, the first one I think is working with the archives, the documents that we have. We have a great collection of stuff, and I think that, you know, some of it is sitting in a corner someplace, and people who could, we need artistic people who can set up displays, and displays that will, you know, really mean something. I think there's a lot we can do with that. A lot of work needs to be done in the museum in terms of cleaning, straightening, and so on, very simple stuff. But we will take any help anybody can give us. Again, we're still working on repairs, but we got that pretty much under control. We had some water damage, and the ceiling's been replaced, and the little bit of the ceiling's been replaced. And we just have to sort of find out really everything that we have there. The Historical Society started in 1940, and over that time there have been a lot of donations to it. And again, as with anything like this, some of those donations get shoved in the corner and everybody forgets about them. But we're trying to get a handle on that. We're trying to make the building more climate controlled than it is now. Again, it's a building from 1865, and with a balloon construction to it, it wasn't made to necessarily, you know, keep everybody at 75 degrees all the time.
Yeah, I would think too, the actual artifacts and things we have, you have old clothes, for example, from back in the day. It's probably not good for those things to sit there through the winter with no heat or anything.
Well, even photographs, even you know, paper that was written in the 18th century, wills, deeds, things like that. It's not good to have them in an unheated building, which is unheated in the winter because we're not using it in the winter.
Yeah.
We hope to be able to do that pretty soon as we get the furnace fixed up a little bit.
Now, how can people suggest, say, speakers or some event they'd like to see us do? How can they do that?
Again, we have a program committee, and they can let me know, and I'm happy to pass that on to the program committee. I'm ex officio on all the committees, so we're going to keep in touch with what's going on. What happens too often with speakers is that another historical society will have a speaker, and then another one have that speaker, and then, oh, we'll latch onto that too. And so we end up doing a lot of repetition for what other organizations are doing. We want to be the first one to have some of these speakers, and I think that they're around. There are people, many people, including me now, who write local history as a hobby, and so they might think that local history isn't terribly important to any kind of a wider audience. Well, it is. It is, because pieces can be put together. One of the things I like about programs that I think is really useful is to have a program where you have a panel discussion of some kind, and different people have input, different kind of input. I think people are going to learn a lot from that.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be just one speaker with his PowerPoint presentation, you know, educating everyone, but there are a lot of other ways to do that.
Yeah, there is a survey that's on the Historical Society website. That's one way to kind of make suggestions or express your ideas. The other one would be, as you say, either contacting you or going to that contact email address with suggestions. We still need more members, so I guess recruiting people's neighbors and other folks, for those of you who are our members, would help a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, we'd like to try to get over 500. I was shooting for 1,000. We have 7,000 homes, residences here in Portsmouth, so 1,000 doesn't seem to be overly optimistic.
Right.
Certainly the volunteering your time, and I think for somebody that might be interested, for example, in being a docent, in order to keep the place open more hours, we'll need more docents.
Right.
A good way to get involved at the beginning might be to come down and help clean it up and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we have traditionally opened on Memorial Day and stayed open until Columbus Day. But again, that's 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and we have so much there to show that we really want to do it, have it open more often. Yep. And you can't rely on 10, 12 people of the board to be the only docents. We really need other people. And any time that someone volunteers to be a docent, there will be a board member there with them while they're doing it. So again, it's a matter of just helping out and find your way.
Yeah, so even a couple hours a month of somebody's time would be very valuable to us because we could keep the place open more.
Yep, it's important.
We've got a lot of other stuff going on, genealogy, student things. Fundraising is going to always be a big one. All this stuff requires funds to keep moving. As you say, researching old documents. We've got 1 million of them here, and we've been going from the Historical Society into the library to get things digitized through our Portsmouth History program there. So there's a lot of things that people could really help out on here.
Yeah, we have a good carryover from 375th, where a number of us worked really hard on that.
Like you and me.
A few other people did, but a lot of other people. But we had a wonderful committee, and we got a lot done with a great deal of enthusiasm, and I think that really helped alert everybody in the town to the fact that it brought the town together. It was really
it certainly
good.
opened my eyes to the fascinating history we have.
And one of the other things, as you just mentioned, that we're trying to work out a system of coordination, cooperation with the library, because we think the library, at least the historical part of the library, and us have a lot in common. There are display cases in the library of historical stuff. There's the website, Portsmouth History there. We've digitized a large number of documents and photographs and so on for the History Center there. We have, for the Historical Society, we have a wonderful website that Gloria Schmidt has spent a lot of time working on, and Rich Tulipsky now too, that you should go to that, portsmouthhistorical.org. Is that right? I think I got it right. Yeah, and there's opportunities there to ask questions. There's opportunities to see documents. One of the really fascinating things that I looked at the other day, it's just been downloaded, was a ceremony setting up when the new church was done over in 1996, and the big ceremony there of what was going on and the display of the building and everything else. And I found it particularly interesting because I was there taking pictures and looking at myself walking around the room, and 20 years ago was kind of interesting. But it was 1996. But things like that are there, and a lot of Portsmouth histories, a lot of photographs. In addition, we have a Facebook page.
Absolutely, people should like us on Facebook.
Yeah, and the Facebook page has a new old picture every week of things in Portsmouth, and the opportunity to comment on that. And we get information from that. People say, oh yeah, that was my grandfather's house, and things like that. And we want to follow up on some of that, and so that make it a living thing. It's really very useful.
Yeah.
So even though we were started in 1940 and we cover history from 1638, we're pretty much up to date on a lot of the technology that we want to take advantage of.
Yeah, certainly the social media. I think this Founders Day, this annual holiday or annual day that the town has proclaimed, will be a good chance to show, like you say, this ancient 1638 document itself was fascinating. We only got less than 5 minutes, 4 minutes left, but I wonder if you could give us some background on the compact itself, kind of briefly.
Sure.
Can a historian do anything like that briefly? I don't know.
No, but actually, what happened was that as a lot of people know, Anne Hutchinson got in a lot of trouble in Boston. Boston was a very rigid society. The ministers were the church leaders, the ministers were the political leaders as well. Harvard, for example, was set up as a minister training college. And Anne was a free-thinking person who decided that maybe it was useful to bring her friends to her house Sunday night or Monday night, usually Monday night, after the church services on Sunday, and discuss what the minister talked about the day before. Well, we have to realize this was a society in which women were not at all equal. And she got a lot of criticism for that. And plus she got in trouble for that. And ultimately, she gathered at her house some of the more important people of the Boston settlement, including a couple former ministers, a couple people like William Coddington, who was the wealthiest man in Boston. He was designated as being the wealthiest man because he lived in a brick house. And a lot of other people who sort of gathered around her. Well, I'll be very brief about this because I'm going to talk about more of this later, but she got charged, and the crime that she was charged with, interesting in those words, traducing the ministers, okay, criticizing the ministers, in other words. And so she had a religious trial and she had a civil trial. And the result of that trial was that she was banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And in fact, they were so rich. She ultimately had 17 children. She had a large family, and she was taken away from them for the winter. The trial was in September, October, and they wouldn't banish her until the spring because they didn't want her to suffer that much. But they did make her suffer by taking her about 15 miles away from her family for that winter. And then ultimately, a lot of those friends that she had gained association with decided that maybe it was time to get out. And so she was banished, and a number of others were banished as well. And so they decided they had to go somewhere. So they sat down in Boston, as far as we know, in William Coddington's house, and wrote up a document of what are we going to do out there on the wild frontier. And they agreed to band together. They agreed to work together in a new settlement. They shopped around. They looked in Delaware. They looked in Long Island. And ultimately, they came across Roger Williams, who had founded Providence in 1636. And they negotiated with him and through him with the Indians in South County and purchased this island. So the compact is the founding document for this community. It's a little bit ironic is that when the split took place between the followers of Coddington and the followers of Van Hutchinson in 1639, they were in the middle of a town meeting, and Coddington and a number of his followers walked out, one of whom was William Dyer, who was the clerk. So he closed up the minutes book, including the compact, and took it to Newport, where they settled there. And so that's why the Portsmouth Compact is in a book.
Where it remains today.
Yeah, where it still is, of the earliest town meeting records of Newport.
Yeah.
But anyways, but the compact is really crucial. And again, something that's written 1638, and you can read all the signatures. It's a really neat thing to see.
Well, Jim, we hope that you're going to do a lecture after that showing of the compact. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating history. It's our history, and I think we all need to get behind this. And I'd like to just say that we still need help here. The Portsmouth Historical Society can still use your help. It's a very worthwhile cause. Please get involved with us, I think, is the message.
Mm-hmm. And you can get involved as much as you want or as little as you want, but we really need people to come forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Jim, for being here again. I hope we get you back to discuss history. I could sit here and listen to it all day.
We'll keep going.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks very much for being here, and thank you all for joining us. I'll see you next time on Portsmouth This Week.